Kin. It's me, and this is my Michigan versus Ohio State post-game video, and it has never felt so good to be wrong. Before I get into it, remember to like, subscribe, comment, and hit that notification bell down below. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah, I was wrong. I can admit it. I was wrong. Well, mostly wrong. I did pick Ohio State to win by 17. Obviously, that didn't happen. It was Michigan that came away with the victory and a really dominating effort, I would say, in this victory, especially based on the way that this series has gone the last 7 years before this. So, yeah, really dominating victory for the Maize and Blue. So I was happy to be wrong about that prediction. However, I did predict that Michigan would go over 200 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns, which they did. They had almost 300 yards rushing, just shy, 297 yards and 6 touchdowns. We will definitely touch more on the run game, especially Hassan Haskins' day in this one. So I was pretty accurate. I mean, the yardage wasn't exactly right, but I did think Michigan was going to have success running the football, and obviously they did. I also said that our defense would have 4 sacks, and that's exactly what they had. And I also said in my predictions that even though there would only be 4 sacks, which I mean, it's still a very good number. 4 sacks is still really good for one game. But I also thought that they would have more hurries and that Ohio State would do a better job adjusting and getting the ball out quicker, so we'd get some hurries, but not necessarily the sacks. And that kind of happened as well. We were credited with 4 quarterback hurries. And only, 4 sacks plus 4 hurries on top of that is a pretty good day. I think that Stroud was feeling the pressure. I think he was feeling it even when we weren't necessarily getting home to him. You get to him a few times and that clock starts to speed up in his head. And I think that was definitely happening quite a bit. He looked uncomfortable all day. Part of that could have been the weather, but I think the majority of that was Aiden Hutchinson constantly being in his grill. So I guess I will start there since we're talking about the defense. Aiden Hutchinson, what a monster day. 3 sacks, 5 solo tackles, 7 total. He was all over the field. 3 tackles for a loss, 1 quarterback hurry. But even on plays where he doesn't get on the stat sheet, he was having an effect on the game. And my goodness, if he had tipped that pass, that running back swing pass that got Travion Henderson into the end zone, he was that close, right? He was that close from batting that ball away, and that would have changed the game even more in Michigan's favor. So he's everywhere. It's obvious why he's going to be a top 10 NFL draft pick. It's not just his pass rush ability. He is great at getting out to the flats and covering that area, even if it's not necessarily his assignment. He's a very smart football player. He reads plays very well, and that's why it feels like he's always around the football. He just has those natural instincts, and he's got the athleticism to go with it. So a great day for him. David Ajabo had another nice day on the opposite side of Hutchinson. On the times when Hutchinson was being double teamed, then Ajabo was more often than not winning his one-on-one matchup. He only came away with 1 sack, but my goodness, he chased C.J. Stroud a lot. There were plenty of times where C.J. Stroud broke the pocket and he was being run down by David Ajabo. So definitely made him uncomfortable all day. Rod Moore had a fantastic day. DJ Turner had a fantastic day. Really like what I'm seeing out of Rod Moore. You would never guess watching him play that he is a freshman. He has very, very good football IQ. His fundamentals are very sound. You rarely see him miss a tackle. He's good at reading plays. He'll come up and make those plays into the flats. And so I've been really impressed with him. I think he's a very intelligent football player, and that's really allowed him to be in the right place at the right time. I thought DJ Turner did a fantastic job today. And I'm even going to give a shout out to Vincent Gray. I really was skeptical of I feel like I'm saying that word wrong. I was not confident that Vincent Gray could run with Ohio State's wide receivers, and I think he held up really well. He had some misses here and there for sure. You're talking about 3 NFL wide receivers for Ohio State, and for our guys to do what they did to them was very impressive. I was not expecting that at all, so I got to give them a shout out. DJ Turner was in everybody's hip pocket. Didn't matter who he was lined up on. He was always there around the football. There was a couple plays where he didn't quite get his head, he got his head around, but he wasn't able to locate the football. So he missed on a few of those, but for the most part, he was there, right? I mean, coming off of the last time we played Ohio State, just having our corners where they were supposed to be within range of the wide receivers was huge. Daxton Hill had a great game. He had a lot more coverages on some of these wide receivers, especially in the slot, and he did a really solid job. I could go down the list. I feel like everybody had a really nice day. Nobody stood out as being, a sore spot. Josh Ross had some really great fills, some good reads on those middle runs, and he met Travion Henderson in the hole. So, yeah, I felt like it was a great performance from our defense. Love the play calling out of Mike McDonald. I've been singing his praises all year. He had the one hiccup in the Michigan State game, which they've done a lot of work on correcting, and it was, being lined up and being ready for those quick tempo snaps. And Ohio State caught him a couple times. There's still a little bit of work that needs to be done. Obviously, he's still adjusting. There's still obviously some work that needs to be done from Mike McDonald, just adjusting to the college game a little bit and being ready for those quick pace offenses. But he's adjusting, and they weren't as bad as they were in the Michigan State game. So you see some growth, you see some adjustments, and that's all you can really ask for. They're not. I think they would admit they're not where they want to be yet on those snaps when the offense goes hurry up, but they're getting there. And they're getting better. Let's jump to the offense. Hassan Haskins, monster day. 28 carries, 169 yards, 5 touchdowns, and I got to give a shout out to the offensive line. So I'm just going to talk about the run game, because I don't really want to just talk about the running backs without talking about the offensive line, because the offensive line was dominant. It's been a while since we've seen Michigan's offensive line really dominate Ohio State's D-line in this fashion. There were plenty of plays where the Michigan running backs wouldn't even get touched by the time they got to the second level. It was just a dominating performance. There were monster holes. That's why we almost ran for 300 yards. It was great. We had, as a team, a 7.2 yard per carry average. That is insanely good. 6 total rushing touchdowns. Blake Corum had a really nice run. He had 6. He was obviously a little dinged up. That long 55-yard run that he had, he's housing that. If he's completely healthy, you could tell he did not have his top speed because of that ankle injury, but he still was effective enough to give Haskins a little bit of a breather here and there. But he had 6 carries, 87 yards, 14.5 yard per carry average. And most of that yardage came on the 55-yard run. But for a running back who is nursing an injury a little bit and clearly not 100% as far as his speed and maneuverability was concerned, that's a huge shout out to the offensive line, right? Just monster holes for these guys to run through. Made it easy. The end around to A.J. Henning, 1 carry, 14 yards, and a touchdown. That was a beautiful play call. J.J. McCarthy added 2 for 12. McNamara 1 for 9. Edwards 1 for 8. Whew, it was a great run game. Our wide receivers did okay. We did enough, right? Same for Cade McNamara. Not an outstanding day from a statistical standpoint. Only 13 of 19 for 159 yards and 1 interception, and that was a bad interception. Never should have thrown that ball, and he knows that. And he came out and played a solid game the rest of the way and did not put the ball into bad areas. He knows better. That was an uncharacteristic mistake from him. So I'm not going to grill him too hard over that. There were 3 Ohio State defenders there, and I'm sure it's one he wants to have back. I don't know if he got tricked a little bit on the play or just didn't see some of those guys drifting from left to right. Whatever it may be, it's a pass that never should have been thrown. He'd admit that. He'd tell you the same thing. But an 82.1 QBR, that was just a shade under C.J. Stroud, who had more monstrous numbers. So it's just what Cade McNamara does. He's efficient with the football, and he makes plays when he has to. He even connected on some deep balls that we haven't seen him be able to connect on so far this year. So did enough. He did enough. I have been calling for J.J. McCarthy all season, but this was best case scenario. You get a chance to get into the Big Ten championship game, potential shot at the playoffs, and you get to sit your awesome freshman quarterback, who I think has a very high ceiling, and I think that will probably be the starter next year, in my opinion. Even after all the good things Cade McNamara has done this year, I think J.J. McCarthy will just elevate his game to another level. But Cade McNamara, to be able to sit your freshman quarterback and have a guy like Cade McNamara, that's best case scenario for this season. You still got everything in front of you. And, you got a cool and calm quarterback who never gets rattled. And you get your freshman gets a season to really learn and to sit behind a guy like that and really take a lot away from the way that he approaches the game of football. So that's a great thing. It's a good thing for college football. Donovan Edwards, let's talk about that one-handed catch for a minute. That was insane. That was, now I know Cade McNamara doesn't have the strongest arm, but he put a little bit of mustard on that swing pass, and for Donovan Edwards to reach out and one-hand that thing, I couldn't believe it. My jaw hit the floor. He's going to be something special in the next couple of years, no doubt about it. What other great plays did we see? Hassan Haskins with the hurdle. That was funny. I was watching the game with some family, and I was literally just telling them, like, the only time I've seen Hassan Haskins get stopped in his tracks or even push back a little bit is if a big defensive lineman makes contact with him, square contact. It's the only time I've ever seen him get pushed back all season. And the reason why, and my brother was saying too, and that the reason why that is because his pad level is so good. He runs with really great pad level, so you are never just getting below his pads. He's always going to smack into you, and he's going to go forward. He keeps his legs chugging, so he's a very difficult back to stop in his tracks. And I added on top of that, the best thing about his game is that you can't just sell out and dive at his ankles, because as soon as you do that, if you try to get low enough to get under his pad level, he's going to hurdle you. And not 2 plays later, that's exactly what he does to the defensive back for Ohio State, who tries to sell out and dive at like his knee to ankle range, and he just hurdles right over him. Perfect hurdle for him. The track coach might want to give him a call. But that was funny. It just, the timing of it while I was watching the game with some family was awesome. Because it wasn't more than, 3 or 4 plays later that Hassan Haskins busts out the hurdle move after I just got done talking about it. So he's a great back. His vision is fantastic. The offensive line also was opening monster holes. So it was a great game. What other great things did we see? I mean, there was a lot of good things to take away from this game, but I think I've touched on most of them. I think Ohio State was uncomfortable. They haven't played in a situation like this where they're being manhandled in the trenches and things aren't clicking the way they normally do, and they're not getting the big chunk plays, and they're having to execute for long drives. It was just the perfect storm to frustrate and keep Ohio State in check. Michigan did the only thing they could do to win this game. You had to run the ball successfully. They did that. You had to take care of the football. Other than the one bad interception early in the game, they did that. You had to limit or take away Ohio State's big plays and make them, complete long drives and find a way into the end zone from the red zone, and they did that, and Ohio State struggled in that aspect. So Michigan did everything they needed to do to win this game, and that's why they came out on top. Everybody knew, and Michigan and Harbaugh were saying all season, this was the recipe for success. This is what they thought would get Michigan over the top. When I was looking at the game, I was like, yeah, that's, Harbaugh's right. That is the only way that they can make this thing happen. And that's exactly what they did. So it was nice that they had a plan all year. They knew what they needed to do. They came in, they executed that plan, and they just played well. And it was finally Ohio State's players that were getting frustrated and rattled towards the end of that game instead of Michigan. 'Cause usually it's on the other foot there. For the Maize and Blue these last 8 years or so. So it was nice to be on the other side of that this time. The play calling I thought was fantastic. I touched on Mike McDonald already, but I also want to touch on the offensive play calling. And we don't know who's calling the plays, but I am guessing what happened this year. And this is just based on what I've seen out of the play calling, because I love the play calling in this game. I thought it was really good. They added some modern elements to the offense. In the passing game, the run game stayed true to course. It's what they've done all year. They stuck with it. But some of those play callings that end around to A.J. Henning early on, you had a flea flicker. You mixed in some nice plays there in your play calling. And I think what happened, this is my read on the situation. I have no inside information. I don't have any clue if this is actually correct. this is what my takeaway is that Harbaugh took over the offense to start this year. He was like, okay, I know Josh Gaddis wants to throw the football. It's not what I want to do. I want to run the football. So I'm going to have a heavy hand in the play calling. We're going to simplify things. We're going to get back to basics. And we're just going to hammer the football and keep our passing game fairly vanilla. That's what they did. That's what it looked like. I think steadily as the year went on, you saw Harbaugh start to trust Gaddis more. Give him a little bit more. Give him a little bit more. Give him a little bit more of those play calling responsibilities as the year went on, until it got to the point where Harbaugh was like, okay, Josh Gaddis and I are now on the same page. Josh Gaddis has bought into my idea of running the football first. I can trust Josh Gaddis to call running plays consistently for an entire game. Now that I've given him more and more and more, and he's sticking with what I want, right? And so when it came here to the Ohio State game, it was like, I think Harbaugh has enough trust in Josh Gaddis, and Gaddis has bought into to Harbaugh's philosophies enough to the point where they're kind of on the same page now. And so Harbaugh handed more of the keys to the offense to Gaddis, and Gaddis mixed in some of the more modern, I'll call it like I see it, the more modern aspects of the passing game. Josh Gaddis has been sprinkling that in as the season has gone on while staying true to the run game. And so it all came together beautifully, honestly, in this game. I thought it was the best offensively called game so far this year. Obviously, it's easy to say that when your run game is just churning out yards like that at a ridiculous pace. But, it all goes hand in hand, and you can't say Michigan played well offensively without saying the play calling was great and vice versa. So I got to give credit where credit's due. I think that Josh Gaddis and Jim Harbaugh are finally at least close to being on the same page and sharing one vision, one similar philosophy in the way that they're going to approach these games. And I think that helps the offense a lot. And I think you saw that turn into some pretty good results on the field. So that's what I think about that. And that's pretty much my thoughts on the game. I do want to give a shout out as well to J.J. McCarthy, because that throw he had was a dime. 1 for 1 for 31 yards. So it was the only pass he had, but my goodness, that is some ridiculous talent to drop it in a pocket like that on the sideline. He had to get it just over the outstretched hand of the defender playing underneath the wide receiver. He had to get it there with enough mustard to fit it in before the safety comes over the top. Otherwise, your wide receiver's taking a really bad hit. And that's exactly what he did. That's the kind of arm talent that Cade McNamara just doesn't have. That's why I think J.J. McCarthy will definitely be the starter next year. His ability to put the ball into tight windows like that is just insanely good for a freshman. And so, yeah, I had to draw attention to that, because that pass, in my opinion, was ridiculously good. Yeah, and I'm excited for Michigan football. We got a lot ahead of us still. We finally get to the Big Ten championship game, and that's great. Harbaugh gets the monkey off his back a little bit. Obviously, it'd go even further if you can win that game and then move on to the playoffs, and finally start to get this team to where everybody thought Harbaugh would have them. It's taken a while, but it feels good to finally be here with that opportunity. These opportunities laid out before us. And there's a lot of young, talented freshmen on this team, so Harbaugh's clearly doing the job he needs to be doing in recruiting. You got J.J. McCarthy, you got Donovan Edwards, you got Andrell Anthony, you got Rod Moore, you've got the linebackers, Junior Colson, you got I'm drawing a blank on the other linebacker. I can't think of it right now. There's the other linebacker who also subs in, not Josh Ross, but the other one. Also a young player. Lots of young talent on this team. You got A.J. Henning, who's a younger guy. You got Roman Wilson, who I think is a sophomore. You got Blake Corum. You got just lots of guys getting quality football snaps and making a contribution to this football team. So, in my opinion, they're in a good spot, and hopefully they can carry this momentum moving forward. Hopefully they'll get some more wins this year and keep carrying that into the future. So we'll have to see how everything shakes out, but man, what a great game. I feel like Ohio State played pretty well, but they were uncomfortable. That reminds me. I also wanted to touch on time of possession, and here's why. Ohio State actually won time of possession. They had it for 31 minutes, 48 seconds. Michigan only had it for 28-12. So it was pretty even. But why I think that is important and something that I wanted to point out is because I think most people would look at this game and go, Michigan has to win time of possession. They have to be able to hold the football. They have to have the football longer than Ohio State or they're not going to win this game. Well, they didn't have it longer than Ohio State, and they still won the game, and here's why. Because they made Ohio State have long drives. They never gave up a big touchdown play. And that's why it worked in Michigan's favor. Yes, Ohio State won time of possession, but that's a bad thing for Ohio State. That's a bad thing for a team that lives on the big play. For them to hold the ball for 31 minutes means they're off, almost 32, means that their offense wasn't doing what it normally does. And that's why it was a good thing for Michigan. I wanted to point to that because a lot of people would say, oh, you got to keep the ball away from Ohio State. And to do that, you have to win time of possession. Not necessarily. Michigan did do a good job of possessing the ball. They also had really, really long drives and held on to the ball a long time offensively. But they also made Ohio State do the same thing. And those two things need to go hand in hand. So you're not always going to win time of possession. But by making Ohio State hold on to the ball and take those long drives, you're limiting the amount of overall possessions that they get throughout the course of the game. So I did want to point to that because honestly, watching the game, I was expecting to go and look at the stats and be like, oh, yeah, Michigan won time of possession. Of course they did. It felt like they did, right? But they actually didn't. And that's not a bad thing in this case. So I did want to point that out as well. But that's it. I'm pretty long-winded on this one. Lots to talk about. Lots of good things that we saw. And Michigan finally got over the hump a little bit. Hopefully they can close out the Big Ten season with a win over Iowa and a Big Ten championship finally for this program and then move on to the playoffs. So we'll see how everything shakes out. Remember, all love, all the time. Peace.